Giles, I think we're good to go. Let's take a quick quorum count. I think we're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then. I would like to call to order a virtual meeting of the MAG Executive Committee. Please remember to mute your device when you're not speaking. First item on our agenda is call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, have we received any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We've received no comments for this item or any other item on the agenda today.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to agenda item 3, which is approval of the consent agenda. Items 3A through 3F are on the consent agenda. As an update, items 3B and 3C were recommended for approval by the Management Committee on March the 10th. Does any member of the Executive Committee have questions or would like a presentation on any of these items? Hearing none, could I have a motion to recommend approval of consent agenda items 3A through 3F?
I'll make that motion to approve consent items 3A through 3F.
Kevin Hartke, second.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson, and thank you, Mayor Hartke, for the second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, let's have a vote on the motion. Melissa, will you please take the roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll call your name. Please indicate how you vote. Mayor Gallego?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And I was remiss in not noting from the outset that I'm the vice chair and I'm conducting this meeting because Jerry Wires, as we know, is recovering. I was just checking with Eric before the meeting started, and I think we're looking forward to Jerry returning to our next executive council meeting. So I think his recovery is going well.
Mayor Giles, I saw Mayor Wires yesterday in person. He looked really good. A little bit thinner than he was, but he was sitting down. He was enjoying the race, and he felt better. So that's good to hear.
That's great. Well, we're looking forward to his return. All right, moving on. Item 5, I think, is the next item on our agenda. Let me know if I've skipped over anything. Oh, wait, yes, I have. Item 4.
Item 4.
Eric, you're probably okay with this. We don't want to skip over discussing our executive director's job description.
Yeah.
Item 4 is the first on the items to be heard. The next item is the executive director job description. MAG Executive Director Eric will lead this discussion. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Executive Committee. So based on the input received by the Executive Committee last month and trying to tune up the evaluation process for the Executive Director for moving forward in the future, we thought that one of the first things we needed to do was develop a job description for the position. And so what you had in your packet today is a draft job description for your input and review and possible recommendation to approve this. There are a couple of changes that we need to make in it, just minor things on the second page. It refers to Maricopa County. That should refer to the MAG region. And then in the last bullet on the second page refers to a list of federal agencies, including Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration. That should also include Environmental Protection Agency too, given our air quality work. And so those are the two things I wanted to bring to your attention too. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments on this and from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So, committee, just to remind you how this is being teed up, this is on the agenda for review and possible action to approve the draft executive director job description. So, what's your reaction to this document? Any thoughts?
And Mr. Chair, it's Ken Weiss. I had a chance to look at it, and it's very comprehensive. There's a lot of information in there. I don't have any issues with what I read in there. I guess disseminating all that information to the rest of the regional council, we'll figure out how that gets done. But I was just curious if any other of the executive council had any comments on that or any thoughts. Les, did you have anything on that?
I have a couple of comments in reviewing it, and let me take this back to the bulk of my experience is in private industry, but this one, and let me underscore right at the start, I think Eric is doing an absolutely outstanding job. So this is not a criticism of him or anything like that, but I think this job description to me is more process oriented than accomplishments. Usually job descriptions I have seen, even for CEOs, have been, here are the major blocks that we should draw a line through at the end of this. And the second part is, how do we measure success? You know, because I look at a lot of the words in here: oversee, support and promote, serve, work with, provide direction. Usually, you know, we're going to do something tangible and measurable. But as I say, this is an excellent document, I think, for our purposes. But I'd like to, at some point, try and put in more accomplishment-oriented and measurements on success, as opposed to relying upon the executive committee or the regional council for opinions.
Mr. Chair, members of the executive committee, just to respond to that, Mayor Peterson, I think the next step in this process is to develop the goals and objectives for the position moving forward, and that's the I think the element that will require that we actually come up with metrics and how we actually measure those accomplishments then. So this is kind of laying out the general job description for the position. And once again, this will be the basis for developing the objectives for the executive director moving forward over the next year. So that's the next step in this process.
Okay, excellent. Then you're ahead of me.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego.
Eric, could you take me through the portions of the job related to some of the regional collaboration around areas such as homelessness?
Sure. If we go back to, let's see here. Not sure it's explicit. So one of the first kind of generic statements is support and promote. This is on page 2 under management deliverables, support and promote council of governments, the COG, which is where our homeless planning fits into that. I thought there was another bullet here. I don't see anything explicit on that. We certainly can add that and bring that back. You know, once again, I think this probably could use some tune-up in terms of some of the more non-transportation related activities of the agency.
I think all of us consider transportation a very important part of what we are accomplishing, and I hope will be part of all of our legacies for this work. But I'm hopeful we'll also move forward on climate change, fighting homelessness, and the economic development. So I would love. I get what the main show is, but I would love to have the job description reflect the full diversity of the work on which you are leading.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Mayor Gallego, members of the executive committee, I absolutely agree. We should add a couple of bullets to this and bring this back. Then I think this should be more comprehensive in terms of the overall agency activities, certainly. So I certainly agree with that.
Just air quality. There's so many things that
correct.
And
you
I
have
think
on your plate.
Well, and Mayor Gallego, I think you're right. I think when we look at this document and we look at items that are important to each member agency, and a lot of those overlap, some won't. But again, I think I know we're going to dive into this at a later date, but it really is critical to be able to set reasonable expectations for Eric's performance or whoever follows Eric, because we could get bogged down in the minutia of each item and trying to measure success on each thing, which may take years to kind of measure that success. So I think you're right. I think it's just having a more deeper dive and a more comprehensive look at what we're looking for and how we measure success on that. So I appreciate your comments.
I'm going to, I guess, echo that. I think to the extent we can make this a meaningful document by interjecting into it some of our priorities. This isn't the mission statement for our organization, but I think it's good for it to reflect the mission of our organization. So I would welcome adding bullet points addressing climate action, policies and issues, action programs related to homelessness. I think that will do nothing but improve MAG and help us focus on those things that are most important.
Will do.
Thank you. So given that and your willingness to kind of maybe do a little wordsmithing, we'll at this point, I won't call for a motion to approve, and we'll just look forward to seeing this again at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Item 5 is a discussion of the development of the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 MAG Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. MAG Senior Accountant Amy Eppley will give this report. Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. As you know, MAG is currently in the process of developing the Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and Budget document for the fiscal years 2022 and 2023. During this process, MAG updates its member agencies monthly, with the final draft being presented in May for approval. In January, MAG provided a draft of the proposed member dues and assessments, as well as the budget production timeline. In February, MAG presented a draft of the proposed new projects. And this month, MAG is presenting a first draft of the narrative style sections of the document and financial information for the new projects and labor. In March, MAG staff will be finalizing the budget amounts that will be presented for review in April. And this will also be presented at the biennial meeting of the Intermodal Planning Group, which includes ADOT, FTA, and FHWA certification planning process, which is on April 15th. This concludes my update on our progress, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Thank you, Amy. Again, Council, just to remind you, this is on our agenda for information and discussion only, but certainly would love to have any discussion or respond to any questions you might have. Do you have anything for Amy?
Hi, this is Mayor Kevin Hartke.
Yes, Mayor Harkey.
Amy, thank you, Mayor. Amy, I do recall that when this was, the first part was brought at the larger regional meeting, there was some conversation, and it seemed like, for example, Tempe was a little out of line with this. So I'm wondering, was there a relook at the dues, and were there any corrections based upon the conversation at the last meeting?
The only change that happened to the dues in regards to some of the suggestions was just the homelessness reallocation, which was adjusted based on the population and including all of the member agencies.
I guess specifically, I thought there was a conversation that it seemed that some of there might have been some typos, and correct me if my memory is insufficient here, but it seemed like there was a conversation that specifically the Tempe seemed to be perhaps higher than they should have been. That's my recollection. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't recall that, but I will go back and take a look at the allocation in Tempe if we think that there's any kind of adjustments that need to be made and make sure that those figures are correct. But I don't recall any issues being addressed before.
Okay, and it's very possible that I'm being mixed up with Arizona League of Towns and Cities. Maybe that was where that conversation came in. So if I'm wrong, please forgive me.
Oh, that's okay. I'll go ahead and double check to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Tempe is not represented in this meeting, so if we want to initiate a typo to increase their assessment, I think we could consider that.
I make the
I'll
motion.
make that motion.
All right, thank you. Moving on. So again, that was for information and discussion only. I'm sorry, any additional questions on this agenda item, Council? All right, thanks. Next item on our agenda then is item 6, the legislative update. MAG Policy and Government Relations Director Nathan Pryor will give this report. Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Executive Committee. Next slide, please. Today's legislative update, I'm going to be focusing on 3 topic areas: conversations around surface transportation reauthorization, fast-growing states and funding formulas, and community project funding, also known the return of earmarks. Next slide, please. This first topic area on conversations of reauthorization is on your agenda for action. The action listed is information, discussion, and approval of MAG signing a letter to congressional leadership for major metropolitan areas regarding federal surface transportation reauthorization. Next slide, please. So we've had ongoing conversations, as we always do, with congressional offices, national associations, our peers in the Intermountain West, and major metros nationwide. These conversations are really gearing up, of course, on issues of surface transportation reauthorization, but clearly there's a whole host of issues that need to be addressed as the new administration and Congress really focus in on potential infrastructure investment. There's been conversations about a potential standalone infrastructure bill in addition to surface transportation reauthorization. So we'll continue to talk to our partners, peer agencies, and others as these conversations do roll on. But for this item in particular, next slide, please. Our peer agency in the Chicago area has taken the lead in coordinating a letter to congressional leadership regarding surface transportation reauthorization. This is that draft letter. You can see some of the signatories to date and those that are pending, including Maricopa Association of Governments. This letter really focuses on the roles of metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, in the transportation work that we do. Much of the language is around funding flexibility, the ability to suballocate or have dedicated funds to MPOs, but also providing flexibility to apply those funding to areas of need. Clearly, as a fast-growing region in a fast-growing state, our needs are different from others and our peers around the country. So really pushing for funding flexibility is key in surface transportation reauthorization and the language therein. This letter, as I mentioned, is being coordinated by the Chicago MPO. It has been circulated going back a week now. So it's been a quick turnaround. And I know the Chicago staff is looking to submit this, if not tomorrow, then the following day, Wednesday of this week. You can see some of the notable peer agencies on there, including Atlanta, Boston, Philadelphia, Houston, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and others. So we really value our conversations with our peer agencies. We appreciate the Chicago MPO taking a lead on this effort. The plan is from the Chicago staff is to have executive directors sign this letter. There might be logos applied as well. We're working with Chicago staff to see what they need in terms of signing on to the letter. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want to take this topic area as its standalone action item, or if you want me to continue on those other 2 topic areas. I'm willing to do as you direct.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. So let's just tee this up a little bit. The legislative update is for information and discussion, but encapsulated in that is this action item. So why don't we go ahead and vote on the action item, and then we'll just proceed with getting the update that doesn't require action. So, Council, do you have any questions from Nathan on this proposal that we sign on to this letter with other regional organizations?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please, Mayor Gallego.
The letter mentions that funding should go to MPOs for climate change and resilience. And I am trying to just understand, since I'm also part of conversations asking that money for those programs go to cities, where what projects would be led by MPOs and what by cities?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Gallego. I think they're really putting down something of a placeholder pending new programs that would be identified in surface transportation reauthorization. So it's really just noting our roles, responsibilities as an MPO. If there's special programs that emerge in reauthorization, noting our activity and involvement. I don't think this is intended to intrude on others' potential allocation of funding. I think it just sets a tone that we are active and involved in planning for our regions, including on issues of air quality and related. So I think those details would be pending and we have to work out, but simply acknowledging our role in this.
Wonderful. Are we then thinking about trying to develop more robust programs around these issues? We've not spent a lot of time on resilience, for example.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Gallego. We'll continue our conversations with our national associations and peer agencies. Clearly, there's a lot of ground to be covered in these policy areas, so we'll keep working at it.
Thank you.
Council, other questions regarding this proposal? All right, is there a motion to proceed with this request?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll call your name. Please indicate how you vote. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. The motion for agenda item 6 carries unanimously.
Thank you. Nathan, do you want to proceed with the rest of the legislative update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next slide, please. This also is related to reauthorization. It's an issue that we've been working on for some time, and it has to do with fast-growing states and funding formulas. The FAST Act, the current authorization that we're operating within, is using 2009 methods to allocate funding. Included in that is the use of 2000 census data for population. Clearly, as a fast-growing state, fast-growing region, we can't be tied to statistics and data that is over 20 years old now. So we've been having conversations with, in particular, Congressman Stanton's office, who serves on the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, about this, requesting an adjustment to the funding formula allocations for states and local areas to better reflect current conditions, especially as they relate to population, lane miles, and vehicle miles traveled. Those last three components of note are some of the components, if you will, in the funding formulas. But next slide, please. This will really illustrate the point. Growth around the nation and states, we're seeing that most states have grown since 2000 to 2019, with the exception of West Virginia. However, some states are growing more quickly than others, more rapidly. No surprise to this body that Arizona is among them. But as I mentioned before, we have conversations with our Intermountain West peers who are experiencing similar growth. Next slide, please. In fact, our change in population rank is of note. We are, again, no surprise to this group, this body, that we are the fastest growing, among the fastest growing and fastest in terms of our population rank. So on this topic, we simply can't be tied to data information that's over 20 years old. There needs to be a correction at some point. We have developed an issue paper on this, and it was sent to government relations staff around the region last week. We have conversations with Congressman Stanton's office. In the past month as well, we had a meeting with our Intermountain West peers who naturally are interested in this conversation and looking to advance this with their respective congressional offices as well. So we will continue to talk about this issue to congressional delegation members. We encourage our member agencies to be doing similar. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, that was the second topic area. I don't know if we want to pause here for any questions before I hit the last topic area.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see who that is, but please proceed.
this is Kevin Hartke.
Thank you.
Is there any reason why this just isn't automatically tied to the most recent census rather than one that's clearly outdated by one and teed up for two?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Harkey, we don't have insight as to what happened in the mid to late 2000s regarding the reauthorization and why data and information into the funding formulas was changed at that point in time, or effectively remained the same and has not changed going forward. Clearly, there would be potential winners and losers by a course correction now. I think we are open to finding a path forward that perhaps phases this correction in over time to lessen the pain, if you will, from those who are seeing declining relative to our growth, declining population growth. Again, all states are growing with the exception of West Virginia population. So it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to bring forward this issue. You think about the eastern states and their political influence in Congress and the administration. It's been a challenge for Intermountain West to kind of move this conversation forward. In the last reauthorization, we also had conversations with the MPO Association in Florida, trying to gain traction on this issue. So it has been a challenge to date. I think we're hopeful, just given the time, it's 2 decades along now in that population number, that there needs to be a correction to this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council, additional discussion on this item? All right, thank you, Nathan. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last topic of note is community project funding. This is the return of earmarking. We continue to work with congressional offices and national associations regarding information on this. Understanding that there's a portal, if you will, that will be open on March 29th, that will remain open through mid-April. The closure date of that is unknown, where congressional members can submit up to 10 project requests. Important note in this is the funding has not been identified, how much or where it comes from. I think as MPO staff, we're careful to watch this, that in fact, this is new funding and not taking from existing funding streams to the state and region. So effectively, it's monies that are above the line. So we are watching this as it continues to be developed. Next slide, please. There's a number of criteria, obviously, among those it needs to be in our transportation improvement program. That those projects, illicit sources of funding, letters of support are important as well. We are ready to offer letters of support to member agencies as they prepare to offer up projects to the respective congressional delegation members. So we're ready to do that if called upon. So this is an ongoing developing item, obviously. We'll continue to track it and provide information back to member agencies as needed. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Council, any additional questions for Mr. Pryor on the legislative update? All right, hearing none, we are getting near the end of the agenda for this meeting. Next is agenda item 7. Any requests for future agenda items from the membership? Mayor Gallego.
Thank you. Thanks to advocacy from some folks here and many others across the country, that Congress did pass a major piece of legislation. And I spoke at Regional Council about coordinating on homelessness, but I think there's also some value on Executive Committee if we look for regional coordination with the resources that we do have coming to cities as a result of the ARP. We can maybe share some best practices, but also advance some regional goals together. So would suggest that on a future agenda item.
Thank you. I'll second that as well. I think a lot of us are going to be receiving some money earmarked or suggested for specific purposes. And I think we know that regional cooperation on the issue of homelessness is the right approach to that. So I think that would be beneficial for all of us to have that discussion and get some, and MAG is the right place for that staff work and that discussion to take place. So thank you, Mayor Gallego, for suggesting that. Anything, Council, any other suggestions for future agenda items? If not, item 8 on our agenda is comments or announcements from the membership. Anything you'd like to share with us?
Mr. Chair, it's Ken Weiss. This weekend, NASCAR was in town for their first race of 2021 in Arizona. I had a chance to meet with the president and CEO of NASCAR. And I've said it before, when the region came together in November of 2020 for the championship race, I have no doubt we're going to come together in 2021. Our effort over the next few months is to persuade NASCAR to continue the championship race in Arizona. I'll be asking for members for support on that as we go forward, but I'll coordinate through InterGovs on that first. But he was very impressed with everything that's happened, and our hope is that we continue the championship race probably for the next 3 to 5 years. So just an FYI on that.
Congratulations, Mayor Weiss, on
Thank you.
the great event. Council, anything else you'd like to announce or any additional comments before we adjourn the meeting?
Yes. Mayor Giles, thank you for your national leadership. You've had a busy couple weeks in Mesa, and we really appreciate your voice on behalf of cities.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor to join with all of us, to talk about the importance. What a great job we're all doing in being wise stewards of the previous money that we've received and the critical role we play in providing COVID relief. So I've appreciated joining with you and everyone on this call and just pointing out the critical role that we all play in providing COVID relief and the need to fund state and local governments. So thank you, Mayor Gallego, and everyone on this call that's been participating and making that message known.
And I will join Mayor Giles also in congratulating Avondale on a very successful weekend and moving us into a successful November.
Amen. All right, well, if there's nothing else to share, folks, we will go ahead and declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.